Pastor Alex Bruning of First United Methodist Church in Jessup, and welcome to our second Woman Wednesday. I'm excited to share with you about not only one but two women in the Bible this week. But before we get started, I want to hear about your favorite woman in the Bible. So last week I tried to see how many women you could name. This week, who's your favorite woman in the Bible? Comment it down below and tell us why they're your favorite woman. And maybe it's because it's the only woman you know in the Bible. Or maybe it's because that's who you always remember growing up being taught about. Or maybe it's who you're named after. Let us know who your favorite woman is and comment it down below. I'll tell you my favorite woman. My favorite woman in the Bible right now, because it changes. But my favorite woman in the Bible right now would probably have to be, I had three in my head and I have to choose one now. So that was probably something I should have done before we started the video, I would say my favorite woman in the Bible right now is Dorcas. So Dorcas was a woman who took care of widows especially, and she made clothes for them. And when Dorcas died, people gathered grieving, so much so that one of Jesus's disciples raised Dorcas from the dead because everybody was grieving so much around her. Dorcas also has another name, so comment that down below and see if you know Dorcas's other name. One is her Hebrew name, one is her common name, so let us know if you know the other one. The other reason that I love Dorcas is because she made clothes, and I have this skirt that my mom made me a really long time ago. I don't know, I might have been in junior high even when my mom made me this skirt, and I always wear it when I preach about Dorcas. And I just love to think about people who care for each other by making things like my apron today. Shout out to the Cooper clan for my beautiful apron today. I love people who share care and love by making things, especially amazing sewing. So let me know down below, who's your favorite woman in the Bible? So today we are going to talk about two sisters named Mary and Martha. I'm sure a lot of you know who Mary and Martha are. They're pretty commonly talked about. So the stories of Mary and Martha, there are actually two stories of Mary and Martha. There's one in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. And there's also a story of Mary and Martha in the Gospel of John, chapter 11, verses 1 through 44. Today we're going to talk about the story in Luke chapter 10. And I have some awesome women who are helping me to talk about Mary and Martha today. So, this is called Gritty and Graceful, and it is a book about 15 inspiring women of the Bible by Karen Rivadeneira and illustrated by Sonia Abbey Socarno. I'm so bad at names, so I really apologize. And this is published by Beaming Books, one of my favorite book publishers. So go to their website, check it out. They have tons of awesome stuff. But these are beautifully illustrated pages about women in the Bible. So here we have Mary and Martha. And there's just a little section written as if it were written by Mary and Martha. We are sisters. We love each other. We both followed Jesus. But in every other way, we are as different as can be. Are you different from your sibling? Are you and your sibling kind of button heads right now because you're so different and you're having to spend way too much time together? Mary loved to listen to Jesus' teaching and poured expensive perfume on his feet. Martha kept busy in the kitchen, making sure everyone was fed and parties ran smoothly. People shamed us both for our choices. Sometimes we even shamed each other. But Jesus loved us both, and we each served Jesus in our own way. God did great things for us, and we did great things for God. And then it shares a Bible verse as well. This comes from Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 39. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister, Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. Mary and Martha both served God, but in different ways. Martha, whose name means lady, or mistress of the house. So kind of fitting her name, she was the one who cooked and cleaned and made sure everything was prepared to host such an honorable guest as Jesus. That's what Martha did. Mary sat at Jesus' feet and listened. And oftentimes, people are kind of mean to Martha about her choice to cook and clean and have a house prepared. They say that Mary got it right when she sat at Jesus' feet. But then there are others, maybe who are a little bit more like Martha, who like to keep busy and doing things, who criticize Mary for sitting there and doing nothing except listening to Jesus instead of helping to cook and clean and get everything ready for this honorable guest. But the truth is, Mary and Martha were made different. Martha thoroughly found her passion, found her vocation in making sure this banquet was set up for Jesus and making sure the house was clean and the food was ready. Whereas Mary found her vocation in listening and learning. Neither one was wrong. Both of them served Jesus, served God in their own way. What's important to remember is that we all are called to serve God in our own way. I serve God by being a pastor. But there are a lot of people in the world who serve God not as a pastor. In fact, I can think of tons of people who serve God in other ways. I can think of my husband who serves God by teaching high schoolers and junior high students. Never in a million years could I do that. I think of people who run nonprofit organizations like food pantries. I think of doctors and nurses who serve God by caring for the sick. I think of police officers who serve God by protecting our streets and our citizens. I think of farmers who serve God by tilling the earth and caring for the planet. I think of junior high students who serve God by being kind to the kid that everyone else is mean to. I think of siblings who serve God by caring for their little siblings. There are so many ways you can serve God, and you can use your own special talents to do that. Mary and Martha were different. One served God by sitting and listening and learning, and one served God by feeding and doing. Both of them were serving God. So how has God made you to serve? What special talents do you have to serve God in our world, to care for God and to care for neighbor? What do you find joy in doing that you can do to help serve others? So I find great joy in talking, believe it or not. And so I get to serve God by talking about God. It's awesome. It's one of my favorite things. I also am a little bit like Mary. I love to learn and to dig into things. So I get to serve God by digging into Scripture and learning about Scripture and then talking about it to all of you. I also love to cook and to bake. So I get to serve God by baking and sharing with others, by dropping off goodies, by making casseroles when someone is sick or in need. These are great ways. I also serve God by feeding my family. I am generally in charge of making sure we have food in our house and a menu and everything that we're going to eat, because I find great joy in serving others that way. That's one way God has created me to serve. How has God created you to serve? I want you to talk about that with your family, with your friends. FaceTime someone and ask them how God created them to serve. Tell them the story of Mary and Martha. But before you do that, I have a fun activity that you can do at home. You probably have everything you need at home to do it. I have to run to my freezer really fast. So I have a really simple bread recipe. It doesn't involve yeast, it doesn't involve letting it rise, and it doesn't involve a bread machine. You just bake it in your oven. So I am going to teach you how to make bread today, and it's pretty much just really common things you have at home. So you start with, and I pre-measured everything. I did a little Rachel Ray, pre-measured everything, so it's pretty easy to dump. But I don't have a spatula. Rachel Ray would be more prepared than me. Oh. There we go, put her in the back of the door. Okay, got my spatula. So you start with 1 cup of water, and don't worry, I'm gonna share the link to this recipe in the description of the video. So you don't have to be able to write it down super fast. So 1 cup of water in your bowl. and 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I just used plain old canola oil. And then you need 8 tablespoons of honey, which is also half a cup. So I have half a cup of honey here. Let me tell you a secret. Take some Pam spray. I probably shouldn't show you my label. I bet that's like some kind of copyright infringement or something. So take some Pam spray, spray your measuring cup, and then your honey pours out so much easier. I do this when I measure molasses or when I measure peanut butter as well, because it just makes it so much easier. Anything sticky, molasses, peanut butter, Karo syrup, anything like that, it just makes it a little easier to get more out of your cup. So I did half a cup, 8 tablespoons of honey.
By the way, that's science, folks.
Cooking is science.
Chemistry.
Oh, no. Yeah,
More specifically, chemistry.
I'm a chemist. Okay, so we have our 1 cup of water, our 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, our 8 tablespoons of honey. So then we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I know that seems like a lot of salt. And then we need 3 tablespoons of softened butter. So if you're like me, you accidentally microwaved your butter a little too long. So then I put it in the freezer so that it could get a more softened texture than liquid, because that's what it was before. So 3 tablespoons of butter. I just use cheap old margarine stick butter that I had in my fridge. And if you're out of stick butter, you can scoop it out of a tub of butter too. So, you know, trying to find just things you have around your house. And then you need 1 egg. I went ahead and cracked it and whipped it up in the bowl before adding it. So I'm working on my inner Martha here as I am making some bread. So you're gonna add all of that, and then you're gonna mix that all together. I recommend you kind of mix slowly, otherwise you'll make a huge mess. I clean my counters for this, so I'm trying to keep them clean, because usually when I cook, I do make a huge mess. Yeah, a huge mess. Okay. So then once you have all of that mixed together, your 1 cup water, your 2 tablespoons vegetable oil, your 8 tablespoons or half a cup of honey, your 1.5 teaspoons salt, your 3 tablespoons of softened butter, and your 1 egg. Once you have that all mixed together, you're gonna get 5 cups of flour. So I pre-measured this. This is 5 cups of flour, and you're gonna add it a little at a time, mixing it into your wet ingredients. So you don't wanna add it all at once. So you're gonna add a little at a time, and you're gonna mix it in. Now, mind you, this is gonna turn into bread dough. So it's gonna get super thick, okay? It's not gonna be liquidy at all. So super, super thick. So expect that. Know that that's what it's gonna do. That's what it's supposed to do. Okay.
And could they replace that with gluten-free flour?
Yes, you can. So I've made this recipe numerous times with gluten-free flour. This is, in fact, one of the recipes I use to make my own gluten-free communion bread. And we've done it gluten-free. This is a recipe we've used at JAM, our Jesus and Minnie after school program, and done it gluten-free there. We've also used dairy-free butter in this. We had a couple kiddos with a dairy allergy as well. So you can also use dairy-free butter in this. Now, I've never tried to make it vegan, so I don't know about an egg substitute, so I can't comment there. But definitely gluten-free or dairy-free, super easy. If you're trying to make it dairy-free for a neighbor or someone, make sure you check your canola oil spray as well, because sometimes they hide some butter in that canola oil spray. Okay, so you can see it's, let me move the canola oil spray out of the way. It's starting to get a little thicker now. I probably should have used a wooden spoon. I'm a big fan of wooden spoons. They really do well when you have to stir something thick.
But her dishwasher is not a fan of wooden spoons.
Which means my husband is not a fan of wooden spoons, because he is my dishwasher. So you're just gonna keep adding. Ooh, added a little much there, but ooh.
That's how she usually cooks.
This is how I normally cook. So I added a lot of flour that time. So you got to be kind of careful. Pour a little slower. If you're measuring it as you go, that would work really well, because then you could add half a cup to a cup at a time rather than just pouring it out of a big container like I have. Now, you might get to the point where you really can't mix anymore with your spatula or your wooden spoon or whatever it is you're making, because it's just getting so thick. So at that point in time, I recommend you switch to your hands. So I'm getting almost there. So number one, make sure your hands are clean. I washed them right before we started this video segment, so I'm not going to wash them again. But make sure your hands are clean. Maybe put a little flour on your hands as well, because that'll keep it from sticking to your hands. And then you just are going to knead that flour in. So I'm going to just sneak a little flour out of here and rub it on my hands, and the extra will go in there. So kind of fold it over and press it down is what you're doing over and over again. And you're going to keep adding the flour that you haven't added yet, because you want to make sure you get all 5 cups of that flour in there. So I'm going to just dump the rest of mine in. Okay, so make sure you get all 5 cups of your flour in there. And like I said, you're going to keep kneading it in until you have all that flour really well mixed in your dough. And your dough is going to become kind of elasticy and smooth. It's gonna look no more white. Like right now you can see that white really well. That's gonna be mixed in. Yeah, you can really see that white in there. You can see I have lots of flour on the inside of my bowl still, so just gonna keep turning it and pressing it down. This gets you a little bit of an arm workout too, so that's kind of a good thing right now. With being cooped up a little bit, you can get an arm workout in. I have 0 upper body strength, so this is a serious workout for me. For those of you that have upper body strength, you might be like, yeah, that's not a workout at all.
Also, if you're taller, it makes it a little easier because you can put more body weight down on it.
Yeah, I'm kind
So
of
get a step
short as
stool.
well.
There you go. This would be a good job for a step stool right here.
Yes, and anybody can do this. So
As Chef Gusto would say.
if you have some little ones in your house, some toddlers, they might love kneading this as well. And this is great. We've made this with kids before, so they've helped us add the things. They've helped us knead it. And if you're a little older, you can make this on your own. It's super easy stuff. Make sure you check with your parents or your guardian or your grown-up or your babysitter or who's ever with you right now before you start doing that, because I don't want to get you in trouble. Okay, and I'm going to kind of scrub the
Nor
side.
is she giving you permission.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not in charge of you. So I'm going to kind of scrape the side of the bowl a little bit to get the flour that's stuck to the side of the bowl. Kind of work it up in there. Now, one of the reasons I like this bread is that you actually don't make one big loaf. Maybe you could. I've never tried it.
I was just wondering.
But we make 12 little loaves. So when we did it with the kids, we would make a batch for every 12 kiddos so that the kiddos could each have their own little piece of bread. And the other thing about this bread is it's unleavened. So leaven means it's risen. Unleavened means it's flat. So in biblical times, it would be really hard to get yeast, actually, to get bread to rise. It wasn't a common thing like it is today. And so unleavened bread was really common. A lot of churches still use unleavened bread for communion. So maybe you've been to a church that uses little wafers or just flat unleavened bread. This is actually a recipe that comes from a Catholic mama who wanted to teach about communion and communion bread to her kiddos. And so they made their own communion-like bread to learn about that. So see how it's really starting to get all of that flour worked in there?
Is yeast considered unclean?
I don't know.
I might look into that.
I might have to, yeah.
So in the Jewish faith, there are certain foods that were biblically unclean. I think at the time it was they thought maybe it was unsafe. So there'd be a little research you could do about that you've heard maybe heard the term kosher. Just filling some space so you can quit talking since you're doing some working out here. So, for example, one unclean food in the Jewish faith is pork. They can also not have shrimp or catfish. They cannot.
Feeders.
Yes, anything that consumes dead critters.
Okay, so I think our dough is pretty well done. So you want to get kind of a close-up here. Thank you to my camera person, my wonderful husband, Brian.
And apparently narrator.
And narrator, yes.
Sorry.
Well, I'm breaking a sweat right now. Like I said, 0 upper body strength.
So, yeah, if you're doing this in a group, too, you can take turns.
Yeah, so pretty elasticy. See how it kind of pops back up a little bit? Pretty smooth, really. Not much flour at all showing. Okay, so I'm just going to let that sit for a minute. You don't have to let it rise or anything, but I'm going to grab my pan. So you want to take a baking sheet, and you want to make sure you spray your baking sheet.
Notice how she sprayed over the sink, so parents would appreciate that. Also, a good place to spray is over the trash can.
So once you do that, you're going to actually separate your dough into about 12 of the same size of balls. So
get your scale out.
yeah, so you can measure if you really want. I'm just going to kind of grab off chunks, and we'll just see how it goes.
I haven't thought about that using the scale, though.
Yeah, you could, if you want to make them really precise, use a scale to measure your sizes, because mine probably...
A lot of times we do this, we end up like putting little patches.
Yeah, we just go back and add a little bit here and add a little bit there. My tray might not even be big enough for 12, honestly.
Do they have to bake them all at once?
No, you could bake them in batches. You could do 2 trays. Yeah, that would be fine.
I wonder if you could even freeze it to make the...
I don't know. I've never tried freezing the dough without baking it.
But you have frozen the bread?
I have frozen the bread, and that works well. Turns out good still. You just take it out and thaw it. Yeah, definitely have frozen the bread.
And this is homemade bread, so homemade breads don't have any sodium benzoate in them. Oh, sorry, no preservatives, so it will spoil. Yeah, it will mold, so you have to either put it in the refrigerator or freeze them, or even in one day. I don't advise it.
Okay, so after you make your 12 balls, I have 8 here, but I'll do the rest on another tray. You're gonna flatten them a little bit. So just kind of push them down a little. As thin as you want, really. You don't want to get them too thin or they'll bake too fast and then they burn. How thick is that, Bri?
Sorry, second. Half an inch.
Okay, about half an inch thick. I'm not good at those kind of things. So really, I just kind of pound it down a little bit.
For the scientist, 3/4 of a centimeter.
And so you're gonna do that. You're gonna put them on your tray. Okay. This is where that time lapse on the Tasty app would be really helpful, so you didn't have to watch me actually do all of these. But you just get to spend more time with me, and I know that you miss me because you haven't seen me in a long time. So pounding them down, working my inner Martha here, getting the bread ready. I do find it interesting in the illustration, Martha's bread is not unleavened. I don't know if you noticed that in the illustration. Martha had bread that had risen, is a big loaf. More than one big loaf.
Well, that's prophetic.
Oh, her bread had risen. So had
like
her
Christ.
Yes, so eventually, right? Okay, so after you smash your breads down, you're going to want to get a fork. And you're going to want to fork them. Just kind of stab them a little bit. You can take out a little aggression here if you want. I don't know, if somebody's annoying you, if you've had too much of your sibling or your parents lately and you just need to get a little aggression out. The kneading can do that really well too, actually. Okay, so after you have just stabbed them a little bit.
Why do we do that?
So that air can come out of them. I don't know.
They don't bubble too.
The recipe tells me to do it. That's really why I do it. So I am going to put my grease pan with my stabbed little bread circles into the oven at 450 degrees. I should have told you to preheat your oven to 450. And then you're going to bake them for 10 to 12 minutes. And they'll get slightly golden around the edges, and that's how you will know when they're done. So we have worked our inner Martha and baking our bread. So while your bread bakes, I suggest you work out your inner Mary and you go to the Bible and you read the sections that are about Mary and Martha. So the first one is the story that we read today in a shortened version from Mary and Martha's perspective of when Jesus came to their house. So you'll find that in Luke 10, verses 38 through 42. And the other story actually involves Mary and Martha's brother. Anyone know his name?
I do.
Okay, what's his name?
Lazarus.
Lazarus. And that is found in John 11, chapter 11, verses 1 through 44.
No spoiler alerts.
No spoilers. But, fun fact, Mary and Martha are the only friends of Jesus in the Bible that it is said Jesus loved. So, kind of a fun fact. So, take some time. I'm going to take some time. I'm going to work my inner Mary. So we're going to stop the video, and in about 10 minutes, I'm going to start the video up again, and we are going to check out our baked bread. So I'm about to pull my second batch of bread out of the oven because my sheet wasn't quite big enough. So it has about 30 seconds left. This is my first batch over here. You'll notice the bottoms are a little golden brown. And if you break it open, it is so good. Some of my favorite bread. So this is a little bit of our Martha going on here. Martha, who cared for the house and made food and made sure it was clean and there was bread for Jesus to eat. Did you involve your inner Mary while you're waiting for your bread to bake and read Luke 10 and John 11 to learn more about Mary and Martha and even their brother Lazarus? So let's pull this second batch out here. Ooh, careful. It is hot. So here we go. Here's my second batch, little golden brown. Flip it over so you know that it's done. Make sure you remember to shut your oven off because I always forget to shut my oven off. I'm so glad that you could join us for Woman Wednesday as we learned about Mary and Martha. I'm interested to hear your favorite female Bible person in the comments down below. I would also love to hear how God has called you to use your special gifts to serve God. What are your talents and how can you use them to serve God and neighbor? I hope you'll join us next Wednesday. We're going to tackle a little bit harder Bible woman next week. We're going to look at Deborah. So if you want to get a little peek ahead, check out Deborah's story. Otherwise, wait and join us next week and we'll learn even more about Deborah, one of the judges. All right. So thanks again for joining us and have a wonderful Wednesday.